Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. We are Education Elevation, the Student Revelation podcast. And what we're going to be talking about today is the importance of financial literacy and why we think at the local high school level here in Solano County, financial literacy should be implemented in other curriculum, concepts, and ideas. So without further ado, I'm your host, James Coltra. I'm joined by the rest of the crew, Michael Footlick, Fernando Ramos, Matthew Harris, Adriana Ostel, and Jared Abad. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We made it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, James, for that awesome intro.
Guys, first off, just to clear the air, what is financial literacy?
I think financial literacy can be defined under a number of topics. Things like budgeting, saving, understanding our economy and the capitalism that happens in this country, the crypto markets, the stock markets, college loan applications, taxes. I think all of these things fall under the umbrella of financial literacy today.
Definitely. I mean, with so many other tools and technology developing, finances is such a huge part of your everyday life as an adult. And one of the stats I found when I was doing my research initially was that the actual number one stressor for adults at 70% was finances. And that was under work, family, all these other things. Finances was the number one stressor for adults. So you have to ask yourself, well, if this is such a big worry for adults, why aren't we teaching kids to be prepared for finances, budgeting, renting a home, all these things that come into play when you're dealing with your finances? You wonder why this isn't being taught at the high school level.
That is a good question on why it's not, but there is being taught amongst a lot of other states in the U.S., 25 to be exact, and California is one of 4 other states, including DC, that has 0 curriculum in financial literacy in their K through 12 as like part of their high school requirements.
Right. I think a big reason for that, maybe more on like a philosophical or sociological level, is that the culture about money and finances in the United States has been kept really private. I think a lot about just my own personal experiences in the workforce and the business world. People are not very keen on talking about their finances, asking their boss for a raise, or even just discussing their own pay with their their coworkers that they've worked with for forever. So I do think there's like an overarching culture that stops people, mainly Americans, from having the go-get-emness to discuss their finances.
Definitely.
And even with that culture in place, it clearly shows through a bunch of surveys that the demand is definitely there for these financial literacy courses to be taught and to be kind of brought more into the mainstream. It's just that I guess it's a little slow on the jump to get these things implemented. But we actually recently took a survey as a group from early college students, and in that survey of 56 college students, up to 96% did say that they wanted these courses in their class, and up to 75% said that they were currently unsatisfied and felt unprepared by the high school curriculum that is currently in place. So the question then is, what's the next step there?
There's almost a little bit of a miscommunication that the kids feel like they should be taught financial literacy, and they think that their finances should be taught at the home. And then everybody at home, the parents, are being like, no, it should be the schools. And so everyone's on the same page that it should be taught, but nobody seems to know where. And I think it would be safe to say, let's start with the schools, because the schools can be guaranteed. We don't know if the parents are going to teach these things. And just as a general aspect, I think the school should be.
Yes, especially considering there's a 20-point discrepancy between lower income people and also higher income individuals on being financially literate, which is insane. And it actually goes across racial and ethnic lines as well, being blacks and Hispanics having like I believe it was 38% being financially literate, while whites and Asians were 53 and others as well, other races as well, which is really crazy stat.
Yeah, and just a lack of exposure. So I think that's a good segue of what were some of our ideas of how to shine light on financial literacy and get it more involved at the local high schools here.
Well, it took a lot of research to find out just how big the problem is. A 2017 T. Rowe Price survey comes to mind, in which 69% of parents are hesitant or reluctant to teach financial literacy to their kids at home. Mm-hmm. So there is kind of a big problem in the sense that kids are not learning this stuff. But it's obviously it's very important for children to be learning this stuff. Not only did we do a local survey, but we found multiple surveys that found that financial literacy is having like bad effects like in our society. I believe it was I think there was a survey taken of about 5,800 people that found that 25% of those workers didn't have any savings on a month-to-month basis. So yeah, the problem is definitely there.
Exactly, and to both of your guys' point, this stuff isn't taught in schools, but it's also very hesitant to be taught at home. So if you can kind of imagine, if we were to teach all of our children who are here in school for about 12 years with us in the school system, financial literacy, how much more of a greater nation that we can be as a country just by implementing these small financial literacy aspects. But I do believe that we are moving forward in a positive direction. I mean, we do have a recent bill being signed right now back in Florida. So they're kind of implementing a requirement that you have to take a financial literacy class in order to graduate. Imagine if all 50 states in the US would do something like that. Mm-hmm. In years to come, we can just kind of compound that progress. And I mean, but also to your point, Matthew, since we do live in such a capitalist country, that kind of poses a lot of room for competitiveness. So there's a reason why we have separate classes ranging from poverty to middle class to wealth and beyond, is because there are certain people who do go that extra mile to educate themselves outside of what they're currently being taught. And that's just not happening by default. So it's kind of a great point that you make.
Yeah, exactly. Our point with these financial literacy classes, or financial literacy classes, excuse me, is really just to help those at the bottom who have no knowledge of financial literacy whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for raising the standards of living and people going for their place at the top. That's totally cool. But we should not have people struggling with money in this country as one of the best countries in the world. It's really unacceptable.
There definitely should be a sort of baseline financial literacy that all Americans should hope to achieve, and that the American government and education system should be pushing in general, just to make better citizens, have them make more informed decisions. And I definitely don't see too big of a downfall in having that.
This process of educating and teaching financial literacy isn't like this get quick rich scheme. It is general information that helps provide a sort of comfort and knowledge moving forward with your money. Because as a young person, you may not know what to do with your money, and you could just save, but if you have no idea of investing or Roth IRAs or something like that, your money can just slowly disappear. And this concept of teaching financial literacy or finances at high school isn't completely brand new. I know for me personally, I took personal finance is what it was called. We met 3 times out of the week, and one day out of the week we spent coloring the entire day. We just colored. So the high schools could maybe argue that it's already there, we already have classes there, but for all of us as young people have experienced that we didn't find it effective, and we have the surveys backing us up with like 92% saying they didn't feel that they felt they were learning enough. So really feeling like, what can we do to make this feel like the information's sticking? And I know that you had some ideas on kind of keeping the course going a longer semester, or...
Yeah, so I can expand on that a little bit. Throughout my research, I believe that all the data pointed towards assigning a 2-semester curriculum for juniors and seniors in the high school level. We found that to be an appropriate age, considering that these are going to be the students that enter the workforce or, advance their education. These are the students that are right on the cusp of being free. So we need to obviously arm them with the proper information. And we can see that, it doesn't happen even within schools. There are times where certain schools will have, small seminars that maybe last a day or a week, where they're taught about, the college system and applying for loans and scholarships. But I found a survey, the name is escaping me right now, but I found a survey that said that even with these types of seminars, students, it's kind of just like an extra task for them, because they don't have the prerequisite knowledge to even comprehend, the advanced tax structures and loan requirements for college. And Michael, I think you have a good stat on bankruptcy and college loans as well, don't you?
Yeah, so people who actually were able to pay off their student loans were financially literate compared to the people who were not financially literate, had a higher chance of being crushed by the student debt, they would pay the minimum instead of actually paying what would be a good chunk of the actual required payment. And that's another thing, is people see like, oh, I only have to pay $50? Okay, I'll just pay that $50, don't worry about it. And meanwhile, you're getting an interest rate of like 5-10% going on to that on what your total sum you owe. And you're just going to get crushed in by student debt. And unfortunately, because student loans are done through the government, you as an individual cannot go bankrupt on them because it's backed by the government.
Right. So the fact that, we're sending these kids off to college without the knowledge of really what they're getting into, we all see college as, or at least personally in my experience, I was always taught that college is the route that you go for. You don't just enter the workforce. That obviously that's not the same for everybody.
Right.
But we can see how the lack of financial literacy is going to end up harming these students, even though they think they're making the right choice of going directly to college.
Definitely there's a big culture of pushing that sort of college first, no matter what kind of mentality into students' heads. And these kids who aren't equipped with these proper tools and knowledge that, when making these big decisions, they don't even have the mentality to fathom these student debts that they're going to get into, and just like how the job market's going to work once they even get out of college. And it's a losing game at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So we're pushing for financial literacy in the school system, the Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District, to be exact. And we actually have a proposal that we have. After speaking to a member of the school board, we came together and we put our resources together, and we're able to actually draft a proposal that we plan on submitting to the Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District, in hopes that we can have some financial literacy classes added to the curriculum.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and what I thought was pretty interesting. It didn't really surprise me, but it shocked me learning that by now, Gen Z, the new generation. Gen Z. Is it
Yep,
Gen Z?
it's
Yeah,
Gen
the
Z.
new generation. They're not really up to date, or even have more experience on financial literacy. It's crazy to me, because by now they should have a better understanding of financial literacy than the other previous generations. Since we have all these courses offered to us more directly than the generations before us. So that just it kind of shocked me. It didn't really surprise me, but I was reading an article that was posted on benefitspro.com or something, and it was written by some dude named Alan Goforth. And basically what he was stating was he was talking about an organization which is called the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, which basically like tests certain individuals that want to be tested on their financial literacy skills, and they found out that Gen Z is the most illiterate when it comes to financial literacy. Back in my statement that I just made up,
Right.
and the most literate on financial study is who is it? I think it was Gen X. Gen X was.
Huh, that's
So, yeah.
interesting.
Gen Z,
I
they
thought
know
it was-
quite well how to dance, but they don't know how to balance a budget. And I say that those things kind of should reach an equal medium. Yeah.
You know what? I actually wanted to touch on a point that you made earlier, Michael, about how when people sign up for these loans, they're not really aware of all of the extra fees that they're paying, whether that be bank fees or interest rates. But how much reading have we actually done just to graduate high school, whether it be literacy in art, poems, reading comprehension? I mean, we were spending a lot of time reading things. But just imagine if we spent more time educating ourselves on financial literacy. And you know, I heard the word general about twice in our past conversations. And speaking of general education isn't necessarily general education if you really think about it. General education, I mean, I know that I'm taking a general ed class such as astrology. And although it is a very interesting subject, I don't necessarily think that it is going to be the most useful subject for me to learn about in my adult life. But imagine if financial literacy was taken as a general ed course, or even required, whether it be, to your point, Matthew, of in the later years of high school, junior, senior year, or even in the early years of our college careers. So, you know, general education, I believe, is heavily weighed on finances too.
Right. Yeah. Finances are a part of everyone's general life. You know, like we all may take different routes in life, whether that be in athletics or business or the arts. But finances are all encompassing. Obviously, everybody has to make money. Mm-hmm. So it's just important that everybody knows how to make their money work for them. And more importantly, rather than, you know, taking their literacy and making a positive out of it, I think it's much more important for people to understand financial literacy so they don't make mistakes that set them back, right?
Definitely. And you guys mentioned time earlier, and I want to almost talk about our process of how we came to this understanding of financial literacy. Without going too deep into it, we started with a whole bunch of ideas of how we could better the education system. And we narrowed it all down to financial literacy because through meeting with our school board member, we found out that if you want to make a change in the education system, you have to narrow down your idea and you have to stick with it and push for that idea and try to find all the benefits of why that one idea should be implemented. And it takes years to get things passed through the education system. And regardless of your opinion of that process, it is the process of what we have right now. And to be pushing for that, I think is important. And then also it's this, my mind's blanking a little bit, pushing for that idea that these classes can fall under so many, like you could do economics, right? It could be a part of an economics course, it could be a part of a math course. It's not this like brand new, we need to find a new kind of teacher for this curriculum. I think that it's already something that could segue easily into the school system, and that's why we kind of narrowed down.
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, when we were in our meeting with the school board member, we learned that if we wanted to create a brand new school subject, for example, English is a school subject, history, math, if we want to create a brand new subject called financial literacy, that is going to take a huge chunk of, you know, the school budget. But we also learned that if we were to implement a 2-semester financial literacy course under the math requirement, then I believe the only spending that we would need out of the budget would be for financial literacy textbooks, which would only cost, maybe a couple of $1,000s. Including the fact that we would take a teacher that is teaching some sort of math curriculum, and then we would redirect them to teaching financial literacy. So the process of putting financial literacy in schools on a financial level is really not that costly, and we can see the benefits, that we could gain from that.
Yeah, and I feel like also throughout the pandemic, like it kind of awakened a lot of people up and made them have to really focus on how to save money and deal with their personal finances, because it's a fact that during this pandemic it caused a lot of economic uncertainty, and therefore increasing people's will to being more financially literate, and that's something that we all kind of went through, as a society, or I would say,
Maybe as a country.
Yeah, as a country, yeah, honestly, because it's yeah.
I remember.
So, to reinforce your point, Fernando, like from the McKinsey Institute found that people who are actually financially literate had a way better chance of dealing with economic hardships than people who did not. Like people who are financially literate wouldn't lose their house on average did not lose their house during the Great Recession of 2008 versus people who did, and the people who did signed up for those subprime mortgage loans, which were really bad loans.
Right. Yeah, the pandemic did have a big effect on everybody's finances. Michael, I think you might be able to expand with more knowledge just about like the inflation that happened during the pandemic and why it's even more necessary now for people to be involved in financial literacy courses.
Yeah, so for instance, in the middle of the pandemic, the government decided to print a bunch of money to help out people who were not working. But unfortunately, when they printed all that money, we did not have any productivity, and you can have inflation, but you need to keep productivity at the same rate so that way it doesn't affect or hurt the poor or lower income individuals. But unfortunately, how inflation works is an unseen tax on the poor, because a poor person can't put their money in a hard asset like a rich person can, and they can weather the storm, because inflation does come and go, but it's just on how bad it is.
Right. Exactly. It's huge, but that's just one problem that financial literacy can do a lot to help with. And there are also foreseeable problems in the future. There are some politicians that talk about getting rid of Social Security, which just eliminates another social safety net for people as they get older, which in turn increases the necessity for financial literacy knowledge in young people today. But the fact that we don't offer financial literacy courses while all of these problems are compounding is just making the process worse.
Yeah, they say that most people can't cover a $500 emergency crisis bill, whatever. You got to cough up $500 for something that went wrong. A lot of people actually really struggle with those moments, and $500 for a young person is a good chunk of change, and these things happen. So that's why it's so important to have that knowledge, have that understanding, so you can be better prepared.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like it's just like a matter of time before everybody realizes that, America realizes that, it's time to learn about financial literacy and get a better understanding of it. So therefore, we won't have to continue that generational curse of not understanding it, to its to a reasonable degree. Yeah.
And this is definitely something that it can start whenever, because financial literacy, these concepts, I find that the fear of them goes away pretty fast as soon as you become acquainted with the material. As soon as certain terms such as interest and credit and loans, all these stuff, they stop to scare you at a certain point. And as that fear kind of deteriorates, as you know, hopefully schools kind of push this new culture forward to the new generations, it's kind of on the generation to keep that going, keep the ball rolling in terms of just spreading this more positive overall vibes towards finances.
I think that's a great point, and that with the better, positive approach to making finances not this scary mystery that you somehow have to figure out when you're kind of having a oh crap moment, to better have people say, you're going to be dealing with money a lot in your life, here's where you go forward with it, here's how we make you prepared. And I think that on every kind of socioeconomic level, any kind of education and knowledge will only benefit our society.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Most definitely.
Kind of speaking on, I can't say for anyone else, but in my experience, kind of just demystifying some of this stuff makes just like life in general feel like there are more possibilities out there, and you can actually like realistically achieve these like kind of like what seems to be lofty goals, like I don't know, buying a new house, like funding a new, like moving out, stuff, all that stuff. It you know, all of a sudden it seems more possible, and then it kind of, I think, if you're like in that spot where you're feeling stuck in life, financial literacy is one of those tools that can definitely propel you out of that kind of mental rut.
And not to mention, like, people who are also financially literate spend way less time on personal finances than people who do. I believe I remember this, it was a stat, like, it was like 3 hours a person will spend 3 hours a week when they're on their personal finances when they're literate, versus somebody who will spend 10 to 12 hours who is not financially literate on their own personal finances, which is, just think about how much brain power that takes.
So much time, so much worry going into that.
Yeah, the person who spends 12 hours on their finances a week is also doing that, you know, in way more of a stressed mindset than the person who has to only spend 3 hours.
It doesn't allow yourself to think creatively, or to just have this financial freedom of you can relax a little bit.
Yes. And just to go above and beyond why teaching financial literacy is so important, it's not just about being able to survive in adulthood and take care of the things that come with being an adult. Those are just responsibilities. But financial literacy and being able to accommodate wealth can actually help you increase not just your quality of life, but it can also allow you to create the life that you want to live. I mean, I know in the United States as a society, we just work all the time. Everything is just really about just getting there. But at the same time, we also do have life to worry about too. A lot of us have families. And imagine just how much of a happier nation that we can be if everybody just had the right mindset about financial literacy. And
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that in this country, a lot of people have trouble differentiating between opportunity and opportunity of access. I think that these are two distinct things. Obviously, nobody on this panel is, you know, barred from trying to buy a house. You know what I mean? But none of us, well, some of us, you know, we don't all have the opportunity of access for that. And financial literacy can be the key to opening that door for, you know, that stage in our lives.
exactly, and implementing financial literacy into the K through 12 system, or in our case, just high school, that can also just raise so much more awareness for families to start taking up on this responsibility to implement their way of teaching financial literacy to their generations before them. Again, it just, we're all needing to work together as a nation, whether it be in the school system, and then raising that much awareness to do, you know, having this be taught in the household. With Gen Z, we have all these TikToks and everybody's great at dancing and everything. Just imagine the impact that you can make just by simply raising awareness, right? And just kind of using all of our resources to just flourish in this category of financial literacy.
Yeah, and I feel like if financial literacy was to be taught at a high school level, it would make a huge impact. It's like, it's not a question if, it's like when, you know? you would be surprised on how big of an impact it would make, if it just sparked, and create and just, we just got to make it happen as a community. We should all, agree on this, and I feel like we have, but we just haven't either had the time or we don't know what right steps to take in order to make it happen. And I feel like what we're doing, we're basically shedding light on that to bring it out to the people, and that's something that I feel is very important, not just for us, but for the future of America.
Definitely. I mean, through this process of shining a light on this topic, it's kind of made me realize how little I know about finances. And even at being 24 years old, I want to know more about what I should be doing with my money. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, high school screwed me over. But I want to continue to educate myself to be better and to better understand these things, because I've run into my issues where I've taken a beating of losing some money. And if you can avoid those moments as a young person, you can just keep profiting and keep growing and keep developing for a better life as an individual. And better individuals create better communities, and better communities create a better world. So
Absolutely.
It's music to our ears, James. Love it.
I love it. I'm so glad that you guys helped shed a light on this. I seriously could not have, none of this would have been possible without each and every one of you. I hope that as things continue, we still have this process to go to the school board, to have our proposal met with the editor of the local newspaper. This process is still not over, so we still have much ahead of us.
100%. And moving forward, we definitely just need to keep spreading awareness. Definitely need to keep educating ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I said, just keeping that focus going. And no matter what, encouraging new generations that it's okay to feel stuck. It's okay to feel like you don't exactly know what's going on, because the majority of us don't. And yeah, eventually it'll catch on in school systems and become more public, and we'll see the effects just as time goes on.
So with that focus, I want to direct that to the viewer. I hope you're focused on financial literacy and what's important, because we find this very important, and we hope that you find it important to you and for young people to understand how free they can feel when they're comfortable with their money. So thanks again for listening. This has been Education Elevation, the Student Revelation. Thanks again for listening. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.